Is millennial gray bad? Or has it always been bad? And by bad I mean rich, bourgeoisie, out of touch, privileged. Here are two TikToks that have sparked many emotions and conversations on the topic of millennial gray, gender, and taste. The first. And the second. As you can see, there's this emerging genre, the divisions between a girlfriend and boyfriend's interior design choices and all the outrage that follows. The stories are parallel but the same. The girlfriend's choice in interior design is devoid of personality, millennial gray, plain, a bland nightmare. But the boyfriend's choice in furniture and home is always the exact opposite. It shows personality, color, life, art. The backlash is universally in favor of the boyfriend.
Every man needs a woman who drain the color and life from his home. Heart, love the office space you created. Sad beige aesthetic, tear.
Babe, don't you remember? Everything needs to be gray and soulless.
This is the coolest thing you own, girly. Okay, live, laugh, love.
I think we can all agree that the male partner's choice in furniture and design in these cases is much more interesting. A common thread between his choices is the sign of a less curated, more authentic personality. There's quirkiness to this globe, this pink light, like someone expressing who they are rather than trying to craft what they think a nice home should be. Like someone who just bought something at a market that caught their eye rather than someone who hired a designer or looked up references on Pinterest.
I love limes. I love them. They're great. I love them so much, and I like to present them like this in my house.
I actually didn't even know that they were in there. I was giving the tour and went into the kitchen and it was set dressing. I'm allergic to limes.
Added to our frustration is the way that the TikTok is framed by the girlfriend. Behind the camera, she is not present, but she is our perspective. She comes across as judgmental to her partner's choices with the use of the Titanic music, the use of the before and after as a measure of progress. After is assumed to be better, the home that she has fixed.
Every man needs a woman who drain the color and life from his home. Heart, love the office.
This is where the frustration comes from. We read this as a case where someone's unique authenticity, their unique quirkiness, is squashed by someone who seems to be taking their references from Pinterest and the latest trends. There may be a little bit of an over-extrapolation too. People assume the house represents a larger dynamic where the woman has made all the choices in the relationship, not just the house. And even though that might not necessarily be true, even though the girlfriend might be a very nice person in real life, people do just assume. They assume that the man's agency and autonomy, just like his tastes, are subservient to his girlfriend's decisions. So we have this involuntary empathy. We rush to the underdog's defense.
First, better had character. Second, looks like inside of a burger factory.
And although all of that is true, although the girlfriend comes across as overly judgmental, reading this onslaught of messages universally trashing her feels, I don't know, overly harsh. Like, this is boring and this is nice, and that should have been the end of it. Maybe a gentle nudging, like, hey, you come across as super judgmental. Maybe you should take this down. Does it really need millions of views and thousands of reshares of people essentially providing their opinions on other people's homes? Does it really need a video essay explaining what millennial gray is and what it teaches us about the world and its generations and why it has become a site of anxiety for many in our time? Yes. Why does millennial gray exist? Why has it been the go-to in home construction and renovations for the past 2 decades? For one, it has been a safe choice for developers aiming to appeal to the biggest market as possible. Because millennial gray minimalism is essentially a blank box, all the materials and the design thinking and choices come fast and cheap. Millennial gray homes are devoid of personality and psychology on purpose. The idea is for the person to insert their own authentic personality in the home. This is exactly what the boyfriend did here. He let himself speak for the home with the globe, fulfilling the psychological destiny of his home's millennial gray, which is another reason why the girlfriend's judgmentalness comes across as frustrating. What else was he supposed to do with this blank box? But the neutrality has an economic purpose as well. It helps in staging homes for sale, creating a blank slate that allows potential buyers to envision themselves in it, the backdrop of their future renovation projects and furnishing. It represents a sort of cleanliness for a certain demographic who has the means to purchase homes, if you know what I mean. All of this allows builders to mass produce the same kind of homes and landlords to sell them quickly. With housing already so limited, there's no real power or choice to demand other things. In this way, millennial gray has become the most optimal and profitable aesthetic of our time. Another piece of this is that with millennials' wages not matching the cost of living, there often isn't enough resources to fully furnish a home, so the millennial gray minimalism just stays there as a default, only slightly covered up by tenants' objects before they inevitably move out or get kicked out. I think also another interesting element is that most millennials probably grew up in the very cluttered homes of their Gen X or boomer parents and guardians at a time when housing and cost of living was very affordable and wages matched appropriately. You had the possibility of purchasing more intricate furniture and rugs and grandfather clocks and trinkets, Victorian and European decor. In short, you had the means for a more traditional interior design. As a child of immigrants, I can tell you that my immigrant parents gathered an eclectic bunch of items. Couch covers and tablecloths that didn't match, little statues of dogs everywhere, lizards on the wall. When my parents first arrived in Canada, the novelty of so many objects that could now be purchased probably made them drunk with power and aesthetic. Especially compared to their home countries, they finally had the means to purchase everything that they saw, and the costs were not that bad, so the result was an abundance of things, an abundance of furniture with no common thread or design. What I want to say is that maybe millennial gray minimalism is a reaction to our parents' generation, a generation trying to differentiate themselves from their parents and form their own collective tastes. I also feel like what's missing in these conversations is the role of technology. In the 2000s, millennials were coming of age, growing up, becoming young adults, moving out of their homes for the first time. And at the same time, the first wave of smart technology and Apple really taking hold of people's imaginations was taking place. So the first iPhone was released in 2007, the MacBook in 2008. Around this time, I think Apple's brand identity really dominated people's minds and emphasized simplicity, minimalism, clean lines, a lack of clutter.
Mobile device. But what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now, how are we going to communicate this? We don't want to carry around a mouse, right? So what are we going to do? Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. No. Who wants a stylus?
In short,
You have to get 'em and
Apple
put 'em
made
away.
minimalism the epitome of coolness, with progress, change, productivity, and modern living in the 2000s and 2010s. And I think this is an aesthetic value millennials have internalized and carried through into other domains, including their home. Meaning, I think there's a mirror between millennial gray minimalism and our clean silver phones and technologies with similarly minimalist UI. Both are manifestations of a generation's desire for progress and productivity, markers of their own distinct moment in time and history separate from their parents. Just like millennials used minimalism to differentiate themselves from traditional interior design, Gen Z, or at least the dominant cultural psyche today, I feel has created its own reactionary design against millennial gray, which is coziness. If we look at this new interior design trend of cozy vibes, we see that it kind of synthesizes a bunch of different trends. We have bohemian, vintage and retro, Scandinavian
Hygge,
cottagecore, farmhouse. What unites these aesthetics is this emphasis on vibrancy, personalization, character, and warmth. These are sort of the exact opposite values of millennial gray, which I see as a sort of declaration of simplicity, cleanliness, productivity, purity. If we think about all the effort it takes to maintain a minimalist home, there's also a sense of performance within millennial gray too that is deliberately missing in Gen Z coziness, where objects are allowed to exist in the space, where clutter is allowed and quirkiness and personality get to be formed. Some of the most common objects associated with coziness include plants, lots of plants, warm colors, organic and wooden furniture, different textures and fabrics, art, graphic art, the color olive green, throw blankets and cushions, soft lighting. One of the truths in this genre of coziness is to never put on the homophobic big light, to always rely on lamps, floor lamps, table lamps. Where millennial gray wants to be minimal and productive, coziness encourages many unique objects in a singular space. It is not productivity at all, but rest and comfort. And if the appeal of millennial gray is that you can insert your own personality into the space, then the appeal of coziness seems to be that whatever your personality is, it can be safe in this space. Rest is Resistance, published in 2022, has been a pretty definitive articulation of this concept. Here, rest is formulated as a radical act of resisting a capitalist way of thinking. To be more productive, to feel guilt for not being productive, to account for every moment of yourself, to see yourself only as a tool of labor. As she writes, Rest is Resistance does not believe in the toxic idea that we are resting to recharge and rejuvenate so we can be prepared to give more output to capitalism. What we have been internalized as productivity has been informed by a capitalist, ableist, patriarchal system. Our drive and obsession to always be in a state of productivity leads us to the path of exhaustion, guilt, and shame. We falsely believe we are not doing enough and that we must always be guiding our lives towards more labor. The distinction that must be repeated as many times as necessary is this: we are not resting to be productive. We are resting simply because it is our divine right to do so. If we read this statement with advancing technology too, the pursuit of coziness comes at a time when it seems the promise of technology has failed us. In the 2000s, we were once excited about Apple and smart technology, and today, news of AI advances only makes us feel unsettled.
Of course, I'd love to see what you wrote. Show it to me whenever you're ready. I see. I love ChatGPT. That's so sweet of you.
What if I were to say that you're related to the announcement?
Me?
It's as if the minimalism and simplicity of our smartphones have not given us the simplicity and clarity in thought that they have promised. In fact, they have yielded the exact opposite. Our devices don't make us feel rested or productive, they make us feel depressed, anxious, overstimulated, and guilty about not being productive. In a world rife with capitalist crises, we no longer desire the productivity and sleekness that are associated with better and faster technologies. This is why minimalism, modeled after these technologies, feels like an office space. It might even be reminding us of how empty public life feels, how it is devoid of life and art and social safety. As many of us commute to empty offices during an era of hybrid work, as industry and corporations take over and gut our social safety nets, laying us off en masse, Millennial Grey now reminds us of the harsh reality of minimalism and what it has failed to deliver. As an aside, I saw this post while scrolling on my LinkedIn, a new initiative by consultancy firm Ernst & Young about a family zone created for employees so that they can work alongside their children of all ages while they play and engage in various activities. Doing this essay has helped me think through why these photos are so unsettling to me. I think there's an uncanny valley created when you have a corporate space juxtaposed with the cozy items of home, especially cozy items made for children. As it's not cozy enough to be a play space and yet not professional enough to be a place of work, you see more clearly the deep divide between the coldness of corporate and capitalist life and the warmth, intimacy, care, and comfort required to raise children. Even though this might be helpful to some parents at their jobs, it reminds me of how neoliberalism has carved out the last of our public resources, such that the work of raising children is now required to be performed at work, that private corporations have taken on this responsibility with the caveat that we can only watch our children play if we do it at work. I think the tension between corporate life and coziness is all here, all in the interior design and aesthetic. Even better than a play space for kids at work would be to let parents work from home so that they can take care of their kids in their own spaces. Or even better than that, give parents adequate parental leave so that they don't have to do this at all while working. Perhaps coziness, then, is a cultural pushback against modern design, modern living, modern technology, a yearning for a more authentic way of living. Perhaps it represents a new prioritization towards a living space that is separate from the breakneck speed of corporate and capitalist life, an invitation to settle down and breathe and reconnect with one's own humanity. In this way, coziness is not just a different aesthetic choice from Millennial Grey. It's almost seen as a deprogramming from Millennial Grey. The perception is whoever adopts coziness becomes someone who has broken through the Millennial Grey propaganda and has finally had the courage to express themselves. Every man needs a woman to drain the color and life from his home. Love the office space you created. First, better. Second, looks like the inside of a burger factory. These comments seem to suggest that Millennial Grey has worn out its welcome, both politically, culturally, aesthetically, and whoever still possesses it is seen as someone who still sort of subscribes to a capitalist, industrial, and corporate life. The comparison between Millennial Grey and workplaces and industry is evident here. Whether or not this is actually true, whether coziness signifies a true break from capitalism and Millennial Grey is in cahoots with capitalism in comparison, is up for debate. After all, both are within the backdrop of private property and a consumer responsibility to design a home. The privilege of deciding what aesthetic you want, what your home should look like, is indeed a privilege. And it seems hardly anti-capitalist to just purchase a different aesthetic trend. It's likely that in 20 or so years, when Gen Alphas develop their own collective taste, that they will criticize the Gen Z and 2020 fascination with cozy. If I were to put myself in those future shoes, perhaps I might criticize how these cozy homes, especially as they become part of a new influencer machine, are just commodifications of an emotion, that the cozy interior design influencer capitalizes on a basic human need to feel safe in one's home.
I'm convinced adding chrome to your space is one of the simplest ways to make your home feel more elevated and interesting. The lamp we're unboxing today is a true testament to that, so let's get into it. This is the Pantella mini lamp, designed by Werner Panton for Louis Polisson. And while I know that was a mouthful, the key takeaway here is that Werner is an iconic designer known for his playful use of design, color, and materials. I would make the argument that while this wasn't the first lamp to be released with a mushroom-style silhouette, it was definitely one of the key players in popularizing that design since its release in 1971. As you can see, I opted for chrome, but it comes in so many other colors and finishes. I feel lucky to own it and look forward to enjoying it for many years. We were just talking about things that we did in our old apartments that were so tragic, and we were like, wait, let's make a list of our interior design icks and then not show each other and share them. Yeah, you can go first.
Okay, I think maybe these are the new live, laugh, love signs. It's these like quirky art prints. Specifically, I feel like they're always like a food pun or a cowboy hat. Like,
oh, pickles.
An
nice.
art print of 12 pickle jars. I don't know, you can do better.
Okay, I'm gonna do mine now. Curtains with those really thick or like metal or plastic circles at the top. It looks like you have a shower curtain hanging in your living room. Like, I'm sorry, but just like get clips to put on that, or like literally IKEA is like the most affordable. I think you have to pay
more for those, honestly.
You do, but no, on Amazon there are plenty of.
The cozy influencer brings a standard of coziness, which sort of breeds anxiety when one's own home does not match and therefore isn't worthy of being called cozy. In other words, people may feel anxious that their home isn't warm or safe enough, so the result is that they rush and buy more furniture or add more things or design it in a new way or just completely renovate the place.
It's not like I'm this big fan of curtains with silver grommet, but that interior design X video that likened them to shower curtains was the motivation that I needed to upgrade my living room to look a bit chicer. Soon we will be doing wood planks on the ceiling, which is going to make this whole room feel so much warmer, so I felt okay going with a white linen. These curtains are great quality, fully blackout, which I like a dark room for watching movies. The hooks were included on the back, already installed. Even all that couldn't take away from the fact that they are ugly. In this space, at least, it's not working. I'm looking at it and I just feel a disturbance in my chest, in my soul. I know it's not like soothing my eyes to look at these. Looking at these white
coziness as an ultimate objective is very difficult to achieve and to define. You might never have a home that is 100% cozy, especially compared to influencers who are just showing off the nicest parts of their homes for their 30-second TikTok. These videos can't compete with the true reality of our homes. Our homes gather dust, piles of laundry, dishes, accidents and spills, moments of suffering and joy. In short, our homes are not influenceable at every moment of the day. These influencers use that fact against us. They know how to create TikToks that evoke the most optimal feeling of envy that causes us to use their referral links and promo codes when we rush to buy new furniture. I feel like this isn't really a problem with millennial gray minimalism or other design trends, because other design trends are rarely after a feeling and more about just having the certain art that they are falling under. So for example, you can have cottagecore home easily because cottagecore is just about gathering objects associated with cottages. You can have millennial gray minimalism because it's all about not having lots of objects in the first place and painting things a certain color. Coziness, on the other hand, is a very elusive feeling. And because it is a feeling, a sense of security and rest, it's difficult as an ultimate objective. We are already such emotional creatures, and emotions are very difficult to define, and they are unpredictable and they change so rapidly. A house could be cozy one day and not the next, cozy for one person and not the other. All of this millennial gray and cozy tension, all of this fighting amongst generations and genders, pitting aesthetics against one another, comes at a time when we're in a bit of a housing crisis. Obviously, almost everyone struggles to pay their rent, and there has been extensive reporting on that. But as a brief illustration of the emotional crisis of our housing, 57% of US adults between the ages of 18 and 24 lived with their parents in 2023. 57%. In Canada, housing is the biggest issue, able to sway our elections and will most likely determine our next prime minister. Approximately 35.1% of young adults aged 20 to 34 were living with at least one of their parents in 2020. About 1.9 million Canadian adults aged 25 to 64 lived with their parents in 2017, which has doubled from 900,000 in 1995. So it makes sense why the few of us that have a house to themselves, whether renting or owning, will be met with extra scrutiny when they show it online. Having a house with your partner is such a privilege and fantasy that the interior of a home has become a new site of critique, anxiety, and insecurity. Furnishing a home is like a second puberty, an adult rite of passage, a critical phase in someone's self-discovery. On a collective scale, much of Gen Z right now on TikTok is experiencing this second puberty, growing up and moving out for the first time and experimenting with their tastes, which means that there will be some growing pains. Most TikToks are filmed in people's homes, but when we see someone's home as the central focus in a video, we tend to criticize it as a way to assert our own identity and taste. I wouldn't design my home like this. Her taste is awful. I'd let my partner do more with his furniture choices. In real life, we would tell each other all of this in private, on the car ride home after a friend's housewarming party. But on a mass scale, this is what that conversation looks like. We're hurting each other to assert who we are. If you've been following my thread of thought, I suppose all I'm trying to say is that aesthetic trends, and trends more broadly, don't just consist of things people think look nice. Rather, trends collect our collective anxieties and fears about the world, responses against the material realities and constraints of our time against the trend that has come before. If you want to learn more about the world, try looking at its aesthetics. So we must be careful, I think, ever diligent to not just rush into the trappings of aesthetic trends, valorizing some of its tropes while ignoring others. We should reflect on what we really want as people, to feel safe and loved in a home, to express ourselves and devote our creative energies in designing a place that reflects who we are, to share a space with a partner, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, any friend, and let them flourish and choose and exercise their autonomy and authenticity with us. Let the man have his globe. Let him have his pink light. Let the girlfriend have her live, laugh, love sign, if that's what she truly wants. What do you truly want in a space? Or does that even matter when so many do not have spaces to themselves? Maybe let's build affordable housing first. Let's make public space cozy. Let's be kinder to people in all their choices. We're all figuring it out, aren't we? Live, laugh,